I want every Bitcoiner that can't handle it to get their Bitcoin taken away. Go trade meme coins. What are you doing here? You got the hardest asset humanity has ever created, and gold pumps 40%, and you're like selling your Bitcoin now? Sell it. I love it. Sell it. Sell it to BlackRock. It's great. The game absolutely changed, and everyone who's been sitting around, twiddling their thumbs, talking about how we're fighting the system with your $10,000 net worth, you are now completely and utterly fucked because.
Interesting.
TradFi drives Bitcoin now. And when a TradFi drives an asset, you're going to have to follow the rules that TradFi sets.
Bitcoiners are going to be 20 to 30% of the ultra high net worth class, right? And by definition, that's someone who's worth $30 million or more.
You will have tools to never, ever have to sell your Bitcoin, and you can hodl into the grave.
And the asset of which you're holding is going through, it's maturing. It's getting out of those crazy, turbulent teenage years, and it's becoming an adult.
Damn right.
Yeah, welcome to another episode of Simple Bitcoin IRL. I'm joined with the one, the only, legendary British HODL. What's up, bro?
As I said when we got on here, just surviving.
Surviving?
Why
are you
Mr.
just
Chang.
surviving? Why are you just surviving? Why are you not thriving?
I feel like it's, firstly, that's a quote from Die Another Day. Pierce Brosnan as James Bond comes out of an ocean, basically somewhere in Hong Kong. And the hotel manager says, "How are we, Mr. Bond?" And he says, "Just surviving, Mr. Chang." So yeah, I think it's I think that's what we're doing right now, right? Like our job is to survive. Our job is just not to screw ourselves. There's nothing else here. There's nothing else interesting in Bitcoin, Nico. Absolutely zero. Your job is to buy Bitcoin, shut the fuck up, and based on price action this last weekend, you're about to get fabulously wealthy.
Let's talk about that, because I remember one of the videos. By the way, I love your content, and one of the videos that you made,
Thank you.
that I saw, I think it was like a couple of weeks ago or something, and you're basically like, and I actually even used it on the show, the same talking point, but you were just basically like, we're not in a bull market right now, and I was
We're not.
yeah, that's very true. And then if you look at the numbers, I actually posted this on X the other day. It did pretty well, but if you look at the numbers, Trump was inaugurated and the price of Bitcoin was at 109K. I know we've pumped a little bit. You know, we've definitely got out of the gulags, right? We had a nice little 10K pump, but in the grand scheme of things, like in Bitcoin land, it's really not that exciting. It's really not that exciting. Is Bitcoin boring now, British HODL?
Yeah, absolutely. It's meant to be. It is a maturing asset. And as an asset, you don't like babies, right? Babies are very interesting when they're young, and then they get like annoying, and then they get boring, right? Like that's what's happening to Bitcoin. It was very interesting, got everyone's dopamine firing and everything else, and now it is getting boring, which is what it's supposed to do, right? Michael Saylor understands this. The good news for everyone is that Bitcoin's going to get boring at a 30% CAGR, while the stock market is boring at a 11, 12, 13% CAGR. So it's great. It's awesome, but it's gonna catch people off guard, especially people that do what we do, right? Because we thrive on being able to talk about something. And the asset's just gonna get more and more boring. It's like, what do you talk about? We want to talk about how everyone's getting continuously screwed on buying Bitcoin treasury companies at 7x MNAVs and swapping their Bitcoin for it. Like, what else is there to talk about? The people that hold Bitcoin right now are going to be tomorrow's idiots, right? Because they're going to sell it. They're going to get bored. They're going to buy treasury companies. They're going to do fancy things because the asset is just boring, and you realize that they were never in Bitcoin for Bitcoin. They were in Bitcoin for the dopamine hit, and that's going away.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely, I definitely feel it this year specifically. That dopamine hit it's a lot more muted than it was in the past. So you're not feeling optimistic about Q4 as everyone else.
That's the crazy part. I'm saying all of this to say that what the price action that we've had this weekend has just made me more bullish as fuck than I've been for months. because what's happened this weekend? All of a sudden, October is here, right? But this the point of saying that and to say surviving at the beginning is because you're going to have to survive through these boring periods now with Bitcoin. And what have we seen this past weekend? We got Bitcoin right now sitting at 124,685, and we hit 125. Everyone was super excited. That dopamine started firing, and then we had to pull back. Why did we have to pull back? I knew we were going to pull back because there was a CME. There was a CME gap that would have been created if we hadn't pulled back. TradFi drives Bitcoin now, right? And when a TradFi drives an asset, you're going to have to follow the rules that TradFi sets. And TradFi doesn't like CME gaps. As much as all these people want to lose their minds every time I tweet that they're saying, oh, new CME gap opened up, there's a 90% fill rate on these things. This is not, something that is just created out of thin air, right? There is a gravitational pull towards CME gaps. 90% of the time they get filled. And I'm so bullish because we are getting this price action with MSTR buying 0 Bitcoin this week. And we came down and filled a CME gap. This is institutional buying going on right now. This is a setup. This is remarkable. This price action is great, and I think Q4 is going to be great. But it's only going to be great for you if you can survive the pullbacks and survive the boring periods and survive the sell-in Mays and go aways and all of the traditional TradFi bullshit that has been driving traditional markets. And most Bitcoiners can't. So they're going to get screwed. And I'm here for it because I want them to get screwed. I want every Bitcoiner that can't handle it to get their Bitcoin taken away. Go trade meme coins. What are you doing here? You got the hardest asset humanity has ever created, and gold pumps 40%, and you're like selling your Bitcoin now? Sell it. I love it. Sell it. Sell it to BlackRock. It's great.
So that's interesting. So TradFi is trying to squeeze you out by boring you to death. That's
what they always do.
That's basically what I'm understanding.
They
from all
got
this.
2 tricks. They've got 2 tricks, and they've got 2 tricks forever. It's boredom and over leverage. That's it. TradFi has no other tricks. If you can get over boredom and over leverage, you win.
Well, it doesn't seem like you're too bored. It seems like you're very excited.
Well, I'm excited because you're here.
I'm excited because you're here.
That's right. That's right.
Mutual
that's how this
excitement.
works. Absolutely.
Mutual excitement.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. Okay. So, all right. So lots to unpack. And by the way, I agree with you. This cycle in particular, after and me and you had an episode about this, after the ETF got approved in January of 2024, things have been different. Things have been very different in terms of price action performance. And I think you actually predicted this last time. I don't know if it was the previous show, but the show before that, we were talking about the ETFs. You're like, Nico, it's one of the biggest game changers ever. But the price action has been different since then. And I think, this is a year after the halving. I think Bitcoiners all expected like a kind of that dopamine hit that I think we're all used to. And I think that this year has been this kind of slow grind, kind of sideways chopsolidation type of action. And then at the end of September, it really felt like, okay, pack it up, time to go home. And then the moment the government closed and October 1st hit, I don't know what happened, but just Bitcoin pumped. Like, I think it was like 10K or something, in a relatively short amount of time. And then, it kissed an all-time high on a Saturday out of all times on a Saturday. That's so strange, right? And then here we are on Monday, we're sitting at $124,741. So, and it looks like this week is going to be a fantastic week. So, I want to get your take on that, man.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? Personally, I'm about to put a video out today. I just recorded it. Like, I think this is early. So all Bitcoiners are excited. Everyone's super excited. Now, if you were TradFi, now's the perfect time to kill that final hope, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a retracement back down to 114 right now. And this just continues until I originally thought we'd see like a second to third week breakout. This is early. So I really wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing, a pullback. But again, the price action looks very solid. So who knows? This is the beautiful thing about it. This is how you get dopamine receptors completely fried, completely exhausted, and all of the new peasants that thought they were going to get really rich and break out of their shitty lives, you send them packing. This is how it works.
Man, so is Bitcoin not the money of the people anymore? Is it Bitcoin is the
It
money
never
of
was.
institutions now?
It never was. It never was. It's a monetary. This is the craziest part. Like I've been saying, and people hated me for saying this like 2 years ago, right? But it never was. It is a monetary network, right? Saylor understood this better than anyone, right? I kind of was saying it, and then Saylor just articulated it the best. It is a monetary network. It solves the problems of the poor at the same time as it solves the problem of the rich, right? Because the underlying problem is the dollar. So therefore, the person with the biggest problem is the one with the most dollars, because it's a monetary network. It's not a human network. And that's why I always like railed against and potentially offended a lot of Bitcoiners that are for the people. Because at the end of the day, a billionaire with $1 billion is more important to Bitcoin than a billion people with $1. It's easier to convert that one person.
Yep.
That's why the money team's involved now. That's why
Yep.
this is happening. This is all Bitcoin is a monetary network. It never was a human network. You need dollars. And the beautiful thing is the fact that a billionaire can solve his problems or her problems with Bitcoin by putting in $1 billion, and someone who's working with just $100, $200 a month in spare income can also have their problems solved is great. The one problem that it doesn't solve for the person with $100 or $200 a month of spare income is it doesn't get them rich tomorrow, which is what they're all fucking addicted to. They want to be rich tomorrow, which is why the dopamine is not enough. The billionaire is going to get in here and buy $1 billion of Bitcoin, and tomorrow, or within the next few years, now that position is now going to be worth $3 or $4 or $5 billion. But the person with $100, $200 a month, this is not for getting you extremely rich. It's solving the same problem as the billionaire, which is the depreciation in the value of the dollars. It's just that person, the billionaire, has a bigger problem. And so therefore it's going to look like it benefits them more. But the Bitcoin is a monetary network. It's not a human network. It ain't for the tree huggers and the happy hippies. I've been saying this forever.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the part where perhaps a lot of people, and again, I'm an observer here, and I've been in, I've been around the block a little bit, in this industry, and I'm just a
You've been essential to this industry. What are you talking about?
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Quit the humble bullshit.
I appreciate that.
There you go. There's a smile. There's a money smile right there.
I
I like it.
appreciate that, dude. But yeah, no, I've been just observing from the sidelines, and I'm watching this industry change, right? From the Wild West days of kind of like the 2016, 2017 ICO boom to kind of like the layer one type of 2021 pump. Michael Saylor got involved, Nayib Bukele, Bitcoin legal tender, and then 4 years later, kind of this institutional wave. And you were talking about treasury companies earlier, and I wanted to get your opinion on that. So, um, other than Saylor's initial MicroStrategy outperforming Bitcoin significantly in the beginning part of this cycle, Metaplanet also performing extremely well. It seems like all the other ones are not doing so hot these days. Do you have an explanation for that?
Yeah, it's exactly what I said. No one has a unique selling point. Saylor's the biggest one in the whole game, right? So he gets his first mover advantage, and unique selling point is done, right? You got the biggest stack in the game. No one's ever going to come close to you, right? All the other treasury companies, I think, if you combine all of their Bitcoin, they're basically at like 15% of Saylor's stack. And Saylor's about to have the fixed income products and everything else, STRC, STRK, STRF, STRD, all of them are about to get graded. And what that means is when that debt is graded, all of the hedge funds, all of the income funds, all of everyone institutionally can now finally allocate capital, which they haven't managed to do yet. right? So when that product gets graded is a very, very important thing, which is why Michael Saylor and the team at MSTR has been doing a great job at trying to figure out how do we get these product graded, and they will. That will happen at some point. And then they'll join the S&P, and then that will cause a different, as the MSTR True North boys pointed out, like it causes a flywheel of capital that starts coming into Bitcoin. So all of that's good. Metaplanet, amazing job, amazing execution, right? What have they managed to do? First mover advantage in Japan. There's a trend growing here, right? First mover advantage is very, very important when it comes to trapped capital. These markets have trapped capital, and the first time they see a solution, they're going to run towards it, and they're going to run towards the first and the biggest. And that's what we're seeing here. So there's a lot of opportunities for the first and the biggest, and the rest of them are struggling because they're not the first and they're not the biggest. So Japan has trillions of US dollars worth of trapped capital. If they buy Bitcoin, they get hit with a 55% tax rate. There's no ETFs in Japan, and the only solution they got for their retirement accounts is to buy Metaplanet, and so that's what they're doing. And Dylan and Simon and the whole team over there is doing an amazing job. I'm allocated to MSTR. I've got a small position in Metaplanet and all of them, but like for me, MSTR is the overwhelming winner in the game. It's got the biggest amount of Bitcoin. Can you trade these treasury companies? Sure. But I don't know how to trade, right? I'm not a trader. I've never been a trader. Every time I trade, I end up losing money. So it didn't take me that long to figure out I should probably not trade. But there seems to be, at least what I see on Twitter, people making millions and millions of dollars trading in and out of these treasury companies. It's just funny that they disappear after a few months. So it's like, I don't know, maybe they got super rich and disappeared, or they got super broke and disappeared. I don't know which one it is, but it seems like they're trading in and out of these things and making shit tons of money because they know something I don't, which is fine. I wish them the best.
Yo, I want to tell you about the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. I'm talking about bitcoinwell.com. What makes bitcoinwell.com different is that it's a completely non-custodial platform, meaning as soon as you buy Bitcoin and the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. And that perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Support Bitcoin on-ramps that are self-custody by default. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com today. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to sign up, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to buy Bitcoin.
So let's talk about the right, because there has been a lot of volatility with these ones early on, specifically Sailors. I think it was like a 26x. Metaplanet was like a 48x over a relatively short amount of time, right? But that all hinges on the fact that you bought the bottom essentially, right? And this wasn't a sure thing before Saylor paid his dues during the 22 bear market. I never forget watching him first row Pacific Bitcoin. He's down billions of dollars and he's paying his price of tuition like I think every Bitcoiner normally does, because most people get in at the top. And then, he paid his price of tuition. The market started to pick up again, and the man was absolutely vindicated. And his stock, the guy, it's a wonder story. When you went from 20 years of sideways action, he said it himself. Like I was thinking about retiring. There was nothing else I could do with my company.
Yep.
And then he basically threw a Hail Mary, and it worked out wonders. Metaplanet, very similar story. It was a zombie hotel chain. It was about to go under because of the pandemic. And they jumped on the opportunity. And then it seems like there's other companies that are following suit in different countries. But what I will say though is you're not getting those returns anymore, right? You're not getting those 48x, 26x, which sound very meme coiny to me, actually. Those types of returns in such a short period of time. You're not getting those types of returns on the other ones. I'm gonna be nice here.
Not right now, for
I
sure.
know a
Yeah,
lot of
no,
them, but
not right.
some are even down like 95, 96%, which you and I both know is incredibly hard to come back from. So I want to, and some of the bigger ones are down like that. So I want to get your thoughts on that, British HODL.
Yeah, here's the crazy part. The crazy part about this is that they don't, like, trying to beat Bitcoin's returns over an extended period is hard enough. These treasury companies are not even trying. They're not. Bitcoin is not even their hurdle rate, because their hurdle rate is MSTR. Because if you're a treasury company investor, you're not going, I want to buy Bitcoin or Metaplanet, or I want to buy Bitcoin or, SWC in the UK. By the way, another one, first mover advantage and the biggest, right? So your thought process as an investor is not Bitcoin or one of these. It is MSTR or one of these. So now you have to do the seemingly impossible, which is to attract a shit ton of capital, unless it's just trapped capital in your country. You got to beat MSTR, right? Which is why I think all treasury companies will collapse into MSTR, and that will be the biggest in the game. There's a couple of interesting things that people are doing, trying to find their lane. Strive with the acquisition of Semler. You've got Nakamoto trying to create this platform for launching treasury companies. We'll see how that goes. Metaplanet's obviously the one unique one, biggest and first mover advantage in Japan. So they're pretty solid. Like SWC, pretty solid. So you've got some of these that are bubbling, right, and got their own unique selling points in those first 2 points. But the majority of them are going to collapse into the biggest, and that's just how the story always goes, and is always going to. Bitcoiners have this tendency to think like we're rebuilding something fucking new, right? And that's just not the case. Like it's all egos, and it's all young egos, and it's all that shit. The suit wearers are here, the money team is here, and they're here to basically figure out, like, okay, look at what happened to Coinbase. Coinbase went from a very risky exchange to the safest exchange in the world. Why? Because BlackRock stood on their shoulders and said, you got to get this, and this sorted, and then we're going to custody IBIT with you, and that's how it's going to work. Coinbase is right now at least from what it seems, the safest exchange to use in the world. The premier jurisdiction, if you want to buy Bitcoin through an exchange, is going to be Coinbase, because of, just like, for example, when Apple partners with a chip manufacturer or wants to buy Beats by Dre, for example, they go in and they have a checklist of things to maintain standards. And that's what BlackRock did to Coinbase, right? And that's what's going on here. This industry is being brought up to TradFi standards, and that's going to be advantageous. And there's going to be heartbreaks for a lot of happy hippies. And that's just what it is. That's where we're at.
So what are you thinking about this cycle right now? Because I think people are on the fence in terms of, it is different, right? Bitcoin peaked before the halving. I think a lot of that had to do with the ETF approval, which was an absolute disaster with the previous administration. Now you have a pro Bitcoin administration. The president, I think, owns the 6th largest treasury company. It's under Trump Media Group, which I find absolutely hilarious. And a lot of people are.
Isn't that great?
It's fantastic. It's fabulous. I love it.
Absolutely.
It's great. I mean,
I trust human incentives.
We went exactly. I've been saying that for so long. We went from being attacked, right? Because that's what it was last year, like straight up being attacked, to the president just straight up launching his meme coin, launching his own Bitcoin treasury company. His sons are speaking at every single conference. I think it's a great thing. There's a lot of Trump haters. I'm like, no, that's pretty good for Bitcoin. I don't think you guys understand. We got Ross free. Like, people aren't paying attention to that fact, right? But what I wanted to say is, what do you think about this cycle? Are we going to break it? Like, are we extending it to 2026? Michael Saylor is going on the street and saying, hey, listen, there's no more bear markets. It's only bull markets now. What's your take, British HODL?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there's 2 ways this is going to go, right? Number one way is we're going to see a repeat of a 4-year cycle. Now, what does that mean? It means we're going to see some kind of blow off top, and then we're going to see a massive retracement and consolidation. Or the second way is that we're going to just basically, crab sideways and go up, crab sideways and go up, crab sideways and go up, like what happened to gold after the 2004 approval of GLD, right? There was 8 years of basically straight up. including 2008, right, which everything was down and gold was still green. So, I tell you what, I am more inclined. I was thinking that the cycle was going to basically, change. I'm more inclined right now to think that we're going to see a repeat. Now, the caveat I will say is I don't think the drawdown is going to be as big, which would be an order of magnitude difference in terms of what type of market we have. Like, I don't think we're going to see an 80-90% drawdown. I think we could see a blow off top, and then I think we see a 60% drawdown, which sounds like a lot. But in the grand scheme of what Bitcoin is, that's not a lot at all, because that would be like, let's say the stock market corrects 30%, right? That's a massive drawdown in the stock market. Bitcoin could go down 60%. Right? So I think it coincides with what happens with risk capital. I think that liquidity is just about starting to flow. I think the interest rate cut last time 0.25 was completely, shit. It doesn't do anything to drive any liquidity in anywhere. Because most people have got their properties refinanced at, really low rates. I think to really get any significant movement on that side, you're going to need to get to at least a 3% interest rate. Which, by the way, is coming. We just don't know when that's going to come. And we don't know whether Bitcoin has the ability to sniff out future liquidity, bring price action of that future liquidity forward, and then handle a correction while that liquidity is still pumping, right? That's what we don't know. And we're about to find out. So, I mean, those are really the options here. What do I think is going to happen? I was on the side of I think the cycle's broken and I think the cycle's changed. I think the cycle's changed, but I don't think it's broken. I'm more and more inclined to think that we're going to see a repeat of a 4-year cycle. It's just going to be slightly different. And that's what I'm watching for to see. By the way, it'll be huge opportunities in the market because now we have options. We have MSTR. We have IBIT. We got all these things. So before, when you wanted to hedge, you had to actually sell your Bitcoin, right? Which drove the 90% corrections. Whereas now, if you want to hedge, you just go buy put options.
And let's talk about that too. So you're feeling on this 4-year cycle. There's more financial instruments, more tools that you can use. Where is, in your mind, where does Bitcoin and self-custody fit in all this?
Yeah, I think it goes down to it's just like gold, right? It goes down to your, and I'm talking specifically about self-custody. I'm not talking about Bitcoin, right? In a portfolio as a global, as like a macro idea. I'm just talking about self-custody. I think the self-custody argument is, what probability do you assign to the US completely failing in the next decade? And whatever that probability is, that should be your self-custody amount. Because right now, I can take my Bitcoin spot, right? Self-custody Bitcoin, take it out of self-custody, which, by the way, if I put my assets into a trust, right, for future generations, then I can't have self-custody anyway, right? It's already got collaborative shared custody or something else as a mechanism of how trusts work. So now if I take it out of that and put it into a trust broker account, and have IBIT, I can now borrow against that at Swiss National Bank rates on the Swiss franc, or U.S. U.S. Fed rates on in U.S. dollars. So, and I've already got 2 private bankers that have approached me to do that. So it's like at some point the incentives are too big to hold spot, and you have to start thinking about, okay, what do I do with this capital? I can borrow like at Fed rates against IBIT right now in Switzerland or in Singapore. I can't do that on spot.
Yeah. And do you think there's going to be a difference between the ETF volatility and the spot volatility?
No, I think it would cease the usefulness of an ETF if that was the case.
Okay, gotcha. So basically, you're making the case that it's like, okay, so the Bitcoin in self custody, which I come from the belief, HODL, because again, there wasn't these tools before last year, right? So the only tool really was you leave your Bitcoin on an exchange, which I think is a terrible idea. or you took it into self-custody, right? Now, there's these institutions like BlackRock isn't going to rug you. I mean, they could, but um, a lot of things would have to go down, for that to happen, right? Um,
Well, it's just never happened.
yeah, I mean, but
Like people always say that these things have, it's never
I,
happened.
I would say like basically the you've heard the theory, British HODL, which is basically the U.S. government 6102s all the Bitcoin, and BlackRock and Coinbase and all the ETFs, and they just take all the Bitcoin and they just give everyone dollars in return. Um, so I come from kind of like the traditional school of thought where, yeah, I think self-custody Bitcoin is the way. However, just educating people on Bitcoin, specifically like if you're part of the older generation, you're a high net worth individual, you're used to owning real estate, equities, all that stuff. It's a lot easier for me to convince you to buy Bitcoin with these products that are currently on the market. It was a lot harder for me to convince you to buy Bitcoin when it was just spot Bitcoin, and then you had to you ended up being an Uncle Jim for a lot of these people, because it doesn't matter how many times you taught them how to self custody, they're still going to give you a call when they want to access their Bitcoin. That's been my experience, and I've been doing this for a decade, basically. Um, so now that you have these products, and it's like, hey, just go on your Schwab account, you know, go on your Schwab account. There's the IBIT. Boom, you could buy it.
By the way, it might be the only way, right? Like there might not be a possibility to educate. Like for example, me mentioning just now, having a trust account. Like if your assets are in a trust and you've got trustees, those trustees might only operate through a broker account. In which case, at least you now have the ability to gain some exposure, where you couldn't even put Bitcoin in the trust because they didn't understand self custody at that point.
Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledn is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to HODL while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to ledn.io today.
And also let's talk about too, because I think a lot of people, a lot of Bitcoiners, which is I would say the majority of our audience, HODL. I know that you have a little bit of a different audience, but I would say a big portion of your audience is Bitcoiners. I think Bitcoiners are not aware of all the financial instruments and tools that people can use, that the traditional financial system offers that perhaps Bitcoin does not offer. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because you were talking about how a bank in Switzerland would, allow you to borrow against your Bitcoin. I think you said it's like 4% or something like that.
Yeah.
So could you
Yep.
talk a little bit about that? Some of the most interesting tools that you think are the most useful.
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of thing that I'm trying to get Bitcoiners to pull their heads out of their asses and start understanding, like, okay, TradFi is here. TradFi is utilizing this asset. I've got private bankers coming up to me at events and quietly saying that Bitcoin is the best private banking asset that has ever been thought of. And they're orchestrating and they're assimilating and they're putting things together to take advantage of that. And here are the tools. It's very, very simple, right? You've got derivatives markets that allow you to hedge. So for example, let's say Bitcoin right now, right? Just like tomorrow we wake up and it's 350,000, right? I can go and buy put options at 350,000, basically hedge 50, 60% drawdowns effortlessly with, let's say I can take 5% of my profits and hedge that. So I no longer need to sell my Bitcoin and I can hedge that. If the price comes and retraces back down 50, 60%, I've now, let's say I put $1 million into that hedge, I can now take $3 million back and buy more Bitcoin with it without selling any of my original Bitcoin. A traditional Bitcoiner, if they wanted to hedge that, if they did, they would have to sell that Bitcoin, right? And hope they're right. Worst case scenario, I'm wrong and I lose 5%.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one tool. Second tool, I can now go and borrow against my IBIT, for example. If I put my wealth and I set up a private banking relationship with, several banks right now, and I can borrow against, let's say I've got $10 million of IBIT or $15 million of IBIT or $20 million of IBIT, I can go and take a 25% loan against that at central bank rates of any currency that you want right now, right? So I no longer need to ever sell my Bitcoin in order to take in order to generate any profits or generate any cash flow, right? That's one way. That's another way of doing it. The other way of doing it is by using fixed income products like STRC. You got, let's say, you got $5 million in STRC. You now have a top 1% of America's salary on an annual basis, right? They're paying 10%. You put $5 million in, you got $500,000 in net income without doing a single fucking thing. Personally, I prefer STRK because I like the upside on MSTR. That's another product. You got MSTY, right? If you want to take a little bit more risk, you want yield harvesting, so you want them to actually go to work for you and actually generate yield out of the market's volatility. There's a difference between like fixed income. A lot of people are thinking like, do I invest in STRC, which is a fixed income product, or MSTY? And these are two different products for two different purposes. If you want to, use opportunistically the volatility that's going on, then you use MSTY. If you want a guaranteed fixed income, then you use STRC. Like these are two different products, but they're now available and they weren't before. So now you can go and take, like I did, I put 7% of my overall net worth. Maybe it's slightly less now because of the uplift in price, but 5 to 7% of my overall portfolio, and I have, more than a top 1% net income, quote unquote salary just from my portfolio, and it's only 5 to 7% exposure. That allows you to hold your position without having to sell at potential tops and time potential tops. So there's lots of things you can do. You can borrow against margin, right? If you've got a big enough account, you can say, okay, I want to take a margin on my position on IBIT and buy MSTR with it. So you got further leverage to the upside on that. Like, all of these tools are now available in the markets, and Bitcoiners need to pull their heads out of their asses if they ever want, a chance to stay in this game. Otherwise, what you're going to get, by the way, is you got to defeat those two demons, right? Which is boredom and over leverage. That's it. Those are the two tricks of TradFi. If you can defeat boredom and over leverage, you win. One of the ways to defeat over leverage, by the way, is just hold spot Bitcoin, right? Because you won't be over leveraged. No matter what happens, you won't be over leveraged, and you're set. That's one way to do it for sure. I'm not discounting that. But the boredom thing is going to be interesting, right? We got to see how people manage to stay consistent and stay focused.
So, a couple questions, HODL. Would you say, because I've heard Jack Dorsey say this, and again, a lot of the concepts, a lot of the things that you're talking about, specifically within the Bitcoin community, I would say they're unpopular. I'm open-minded to this because I think I see the inevitability of Bitcoin being embraced by traditional finance, and then not only that, the success of its embrace. I mean, like this, and this is something, because like, look, at the end of the day, guys, this is the same approach that I've taken with stable coins, because the theory originally was, if you are in the developing world, and your currency had double-digit inflation, you would adopt Bitcoin as an alternative. That's not what happened. What happened was people adopted the dollar via stablecoins, right? So at the end of the day, I'm a free market maximalist. I look at what the market is saying. The market speaks, you listen, right? That's what I like to do. And what I've seen with Saylor was that's a unicorn. You're looking at a one in a, that is a super story. 20 years of sideways action, peaked in the 90s, when Sailor was 30 years old or 40 years old or whatnot. And then 20 years later, Cinderella story, this stock just comes back to life. Now it's on the verge of being added to the Fortune 500. So again, like if you're looking at it from a market perspective, like, and I understand traditional Bitcoiners where they have the hesitancy of not your keys, not your cheese. And I agree with them. That's why, actually, I don't own any Bitcoin actually, but that's why I always advocate for people, taking Bitcoin into self-custody, of course. But simultaneously, I think it would be like kind of pulling an ostrich and putting your head in the sand and just not really acknowledging what happened with MSTR, with Metaplanet, with the potential of a strategic Bitcoin reserve in the United States on the federal level, on the state level. You can't deny that the game has changed. You can't deny that the game has changed. So you either pay attention to it, you either acknowledge it, you either kind of stand to benefit from it, or you just pretend that it's not there. Because I will tell you something else. I think that the amount of products that are going to be built out for Bitcoiners over the next 10 years is going to be mind-breaking to a lot of people, because Bitcoiners are going to be 20 to 30% of the ultra high net worth class, right? And by definition, that's someone who's worth $30 million or more, right?
Can I just ask what you mean by that? Like products that will be built out for
So
Bitcoiners. What do you mean by
if
that?
you are if you're an investment bank or you're a wealth manager, right? And 20 to 30% of your clientele is now Bitcoiners, meaning they got to that 20-30%, 20 to $30 million number, not by selling your company or selling a piece of real estate they bought, whatever, but holders. These are people that bought Bitcoin 10 years ago. And as the price of Bitcoin appreciates, all of a sudden they get into that category of people. And the amount of people that fit into that category isn't very big. It's not more than 1 million people that fit into this category. So there's only so much of these individuals that these wealth management banks, that these investment banks can go after. And if 20 to 30% of their clientele is now Bitcoiners, right? They're going to have to come up with some type of value add to give them.
That capital. Yep.
For them to bank with them, essentially, for them to do business with them. These are,
By the way, that involves handing over custody.
correct. But again, there needs to be an incentive there, right? Because if you go and you tell me, again, I don't own any Bitcoin, but you tell me, you say, Nico, hey, I'm from this bank. I don't want to name any specific ones because I have friends. But I'm from this investment bank that all you guys have heard of, if you've watched the movie The Big Short, one of the big ones. Hey, and I can now, Nico, you want to diversify, man. You want to maintain your wealth. You already took the risk. You want to maintain your wealth now. And I'm going to look at him. I'm going to say, or look at him or her. I'm going to say, listen, so you trying to tell me that you're going to get better than a 30% CAGR yearly basis? And they're going to look at me and they're going to be like, I'm going to be like, and you also want me to give up my keys? If I had Bitcoin, of course. And you also want me to pay you a fee, right? I don't know. So what I'm trying to say is, that is a very well-financed industry. That's an industry that's been around for like over 100 years. They're not going to go away overnight. And I'm already starting to see it on my end, where I see entrepreneurs that offer these services to high net worth individuals, British HODL, and they'll come to me and they'll start having conversations with me. Mind you, these are people that are, offering these services to traditionally wealthy people here in Miami. And all of a sudden they see, the Bitcoiner in the hoodie and they're like, hey, wait a second, that's a whole different type of clientele, right? That I haven't really tapped into. So I want to get your thoughts on that, man, because they're gonna be forced to have to act, right? And they're gonna be forced to have to provide some type of value, in order to acquire at least a percentage of those customers. I know a percentage of them would never do anything, for ideological reasons. But, I think at least a percentage can be incentivized.
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, I think Bitcoiners have to accept that they're going to hand over their custody, right? In order for that to work, or in order for that pitch to work, you're going to hand over custody. There is not a scenario in hell where you're going to get Bitcoiners love this acronym of or a phrase of a buy, borrow, die strategy, right? And everyone's saying the same fucking thing over and over again, like a bunch of yapping seals. And they don't actually understand how the buy, borrow, die strategy works. Firstly, you have to actually hand over custody in order for that to even start to work, right? And then you're going to have to pay back the loan. So how are you going to be paying back the loan on an ongoing basis? The way buy, borrow, die actually works for wealthy individuals is they buy assets, they go up a lot, they borrow against them, they buy cash flowing assets so they can actually continuously pay off that loan and then do a refi at some point. And Bitcoiners have no desire to learn about cash flowing assets, which is ridiculous, right? Which is why I continue to believe that, again, boredom and over leverage is going to figure out its way, and it's going to take your Bitcoin and hand it to the people that know how to actually manage assets, know how to manage portfolios, know how to manage cash flows, know how to manage these things. So that's what I think is going to happen. But yeah, look, I think products are coming. I don't think there's going to be products built for Bitcoiners. I think Bitcoin is going to be integrated into the products that already exist for real estate, equities, gold, and everything else. And one of those mechanisms was IBIT and all of the other Bitcoin ETFs that are out there. So, you got to figure out how you're going to get with the program or not.
Yeah. I think that there is going to be Bitcoiners that, I think are going to see it's like the story of the Bitcoiner that he sold like 80,000 Bitcoin via Galaxy. And then his reasoning
Yep.
was for, um, estate planning and whatnot. That was the official reason given. I think eventually,
By the way, what an amazing story to in life be able to sell 80,000 Bitcoin.
yeah,
I can never ever claim to be able to do that. So that's an amazing story. And for it being estate planning is again evidence on exactly what I'm saying.
yeah,
I didn't actually know that until you just said it. I didn't even look into it any more than that. But if that was the official story, then that, backs up what I've been saying.
yeah. I mean, it's again, I think it has to do with, um, I think it has to do with, um, like, you have to put yourself in this person's shoes, right? For you to acquire 80,000 Bitcoin, you were buying at under $10 or under $100, unless you had a lot of capital to begin with. Um, but for you to acquire that quantity, you got in early, right? And
Yeah.
this is what some people don't understand too, as well, is like, if you got in that early, you've been holding for more than 15 years at this point. That's 15
Yep.
years, right? So if you were 30, you're now 45. If you're 45, you're 60 essentially, right? That's a long time. That's a very long, many things change, right? In 15 years.
Boredom and over leverage.
Many things change in 15 years. And at the end of the day, right? Um, what are we all what are we all hodling for, right? It's like, you're not going to hodl into the grave. Eventually,
Why not?
you know,
Why not?
I mean, but
I am.
eventually you're gonna wanna, eventually you're gonna wanna see the benefits of the hodl.
Boredom and over leverage. That's the only tools they got, Nico. Boredom and over leverage. And you want to buy a new fucking house? They bored you into it. You want to buy a car and you want to sell your Bitcoin? They bored you into it. You want to figure out, oh, I need to take care of my kids, this, that, and the other? They bored you into it. And now you have the tools, if you're wealthy enough, which is why I was fucking shouting for 3 years that people need to get to 1 Bitcoin. You will have tools to never, ever have to sell your Bitcoin, and you can hodl into the grave. Do you think people like bought land in Manhattan and then were like, oh, what happens if I want to buy a house? Am I going to sell my land in Manhattan? No, they hodled that land into the grave.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money, it's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
Okay, fair enough. But I think it reaches a point where, what is 80,000 Bitcoin these days? I don't even know. 80,000 Bitcoin.
What's a few billion amongst friends?
80,000 Bitcoin is, yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So 9.6 billion. So that person is one of the wealthiest people on planet Earth right now.
Yeah.
And he probably bought those Bitcoin for a couple dollars a coin. So he became a multi-billionaire. Yeah, I mean, at that point, what you could always buy back in, you know?
Well, that's what I think is based on you saying that it was estate planning was the official reason. Like that kind of feels like what happened, and it kind of makes sense on the fact that the price only dropped by 3% over that window. So it basically looks like what's happened is Galaxy has dumped that Bitcoin into the market and bought it back via ETFs for this person or whoever it was.
Interesting.
Because the price only moved by 3%. So it's like, okay, that kind of makes more sense now based on what you've just said to me.
You know, it's also too, I think it was Willy Woo that said this too, was basically like, look, like I'm selling my spot and I'm buying the ETF.
Plan B also did the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that. But I mean, would it Bitcoin be a failure if individuals aren't taking self-custody of it? Because I come from that camp. I don't own any Bitcoin, but if I did, you know,
You got straight IBIT?
uh, you know, I don't own any Bitcoin, but if I did, you know, I would definitely self-custody, you know, at least a large portion of it. If I did own Bitcoin.
That's a philosophical question that's for people much better than me. I can't answer that. I'm not from that world. I didn't come into Bitcoin thinking it was some kind of political movement.
Okay.
That's not what drove me into it. Bitcoin is a solution to a problem. And that problem is unlimited money printing, and Bitcoin is the solution for that. When it comes to a philosophical question, you got to ask someone that's a better human being than me.
Okay, so let me rephrase that then. Let me rephrase, and I respect that answer, but let me rephrase that question then. So the reason I think people say it would have failed if people aren't taking custody of it is the danger of potential rehypothecation, right? Because like at the end of the day, a lot of people speculate. I mean, you come from the gold world, bro. Wasn't gold like, you know, I was talking to Larry Lepard about this, Caitlin Long, like very intelligent people, right? Decades in the industry, and they're just basically like, look, like gold was suppressed for a long time because of rehypothecation, right? Isn't Bitcoin at a isn't it at a similar risk if you just have a handful of institutions custodying it on behalf of everyone?
Did the two people you mentioned say that it was illegal to do that?
No, they didn't mention that it was illegal. That's a very interesting question.
Of course, because there's no fucking lawsuit on rehypothecation of gold. That's the thing. Like everyone in the gold space, and I was one of these people parroting this bullshit as well. And the reality is this: there's no law against anything that happens in the space, and the only lawsuit that anyone can turn to and like cuss out JP Morgan for was price spoofing. And you can go look this up, by the way. It's not just me making this shit up. And I'm not supporting these people doing what they were doing, but this was the only lawsuit that JP Morgan ever paid a fine on or the biggest one was for, like, let's say gold is approaching 2,000, they would go put in market orders for 2,100. People, retail will come in, buy up, and move the price to 2,100. As the price came to 2,100, they would move those orders off the market, which is basically, kind of market manipulation. And all of the data research that JP Morgan got screwed on with that lawsuit affected the price on any day by 0.3%. So gold bugs like myself in my past love using these things of the markets being suppressed, all this other shit is happening. And the real reason why gold has been down, basically, is because gold miners can manipulate the price of gold, and they need it manipulated in order to sell enough gold to make enough profits. That's it. I don't believe in anything else. I don't believe in that rehypothecation risk, because if that was the case in 2008, GLD would have blown up. If it was truly being it didn't, right? So I don't believe in any of that. These people that you mentioned are really smart people. I like them both. But again, it is a parroting of the same bullshit in the gold space that, by the way, I was also parroting. So I'll take some personal responsibility on that too. But yeah, no, I don't believe
So
in
you
that.
have a very unique perspective, and I'll tell you why. So, and it was also Caitlin that was talking about this. Before this ETF approval that happened in January 2024, the people that were in the Bitcoin space were Bitcoiners, right? In one way or the other, right? Some more than others and blah, 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 blah. But they were into the Bitcoin crypto sphere, right? So they went to, Mt. Gox, they went to Coinbase, they went to their favorite exchange. And, they bought Bitcoin, right? That's what they did. Or they bought alt number 53 or alt number 2 or alt number 3, whatever. But what's really interesting is I think Bitcoiners underestimate that traditional finance is now here. A whole new subsect of people that don't think the way you do have now entered the space. And I think a good representation of that was the Unconference conference in New York City and Michael Saylor's keynote. I remember I was watching it and Opti was next to me. I was like, Opti, like, what's he saying? Because it wasn't really up it wasn't really up my alley in terms of, just kind of talking about, it's just very traditional finance. It's just the way that he was talking. He was talking to that audience. This is the audience he was talking to.
By the way, credit to you for being able to turn to someone and say, what the hell is he actually going on about? Because in my experience with Bitcoiners, the experience has been, I don't give a shit what he's talking about. Right? That's why I call them gold bug Bitcoiners now. Credit to you for actually taking a second and going, what the hell is he actually saying? Trying to understand it, because that's important.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, bro, it goes back to the free market principles, right? British HODL, like fundamentally at the end of the day, bro, and again, this might be unpopular, but so was me. I've been telling, because I've been saying people about Tether I've been saying that for a long time, and it's like somewhat unpopular in my circle. And I say, like, look, like, boys, you guys have to understand, right? Like, we had a theory about what stable coins would do. We had a theory about what Bitcoin would do in developing countries. That's not what happened. What happened was the wide adoption of the dollar versus via stablecoins. And I'm seeing tremendous success in Bitcoin in the traditional financial markets, but it's being done through MicroStrategy. So I think it would be very dumb for you to ignore that as a Bitcoiner, for you at least not to basic understanding
Bravo, sir.
of understanding of what the hell is going on.
Bravo, sir. This is the message that's needed. And you are a mouthpiece of, the traditional Bitcoiner. For how long you've been doing this? You are a pivotal part of this content world for the traditional Bitcoin space. They don't really relate to me and my background and where I come from. And so I'm very, very happy that you are saying this. And, God is as well, because as you said, that Bitcoin crossed 125 again.
Woo! That's fantastic. That's incredible.
Yeah.
125 at the time of recording. Smash the like button. Smash the buy button. Um, and yeah, this is a very
Don't even smash. No, don't even. I don't want to lie to these people. Don't even smash the buy button because your buys, your retail buys are fucking irrelevant now. That's why I was shouting about it for so long, saying you better get to 1 Bitcoin because you are completely and utterly irrelevant to this market at this point. The big boys are here. They were here June 15, 2023. The game absolutely changed. And everyone who's been sitting around fucking twiddling their thumbs, talking about how we're fighting the system with your $10,000 net worth, you are now completely and utterly fucked because you are not driving this market anymore. I'm sorry. Your ego is done. It is over. The best that you can do right now, if you're one of those people, is hold on tight and hug your Bitcoin as tight as humanly possible. Because if you don't want to learn how TradFi works, you don't want to learn what other options there are, like Nico is saying, and you don't want to learn, all of the tools available to you, good fucking luck, because boredom and over leverage is coming for you.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you that you have to you at least have to, as a Bitcoiner, I love British HODL because he doesn't censor his mind, right? He speaks exactly his mind. And one of the things that really resonated with me as a content creator, just the pitch. It's like, get to at least 1 Bitcoin, shut the F up, buy Bitcoin, get fabulously wealthy. It was great. It had a rhythm to it. But one of the things that I really, I really liked, man, and just now with what you're saying, this message is, and again, I'm just using common sense, and I don't have this background, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have the background that British HODL does. I'm just using just free market, basic common sense. That's what I'm looking at it, right? And does that mean that my strategy is going to change as a Bitcoiner? Like, am I not advocating for self custody? None of that changes. But what I'm trying to say is, you have to learn about the asset of which you're holding, and the asset of which you're holding is going through. It's maturing. It's getting out of those crazy, turbulent teenage years, and it's becoming an adult. It's becoming a maturing asset, as you said. And not to understand the process, I think is incredibly naive. And I think also too, if you've been a Bitcoiner, going back to what I was saying, like 20 minutes ago or whatnot, if you've been a Bitcoiner for these last 15 years or whatnot, last 10 years, last 5 years, last 6 years, and you've hodled, you've kept the majority of your hodl, at least a portion of your hodl, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want your business over the next decade. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to want your business.
And I know them. They're at the conferences. They're looking. They're trying to figure out how this is going to work. And they're Bitcoiners too.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting, man. But anyways, dude, we are getting to the top of the hour. Bitcoin's at 125K, 100. So it was a good recording session. All these good vibes, man, made the price go up. I'm taking credit for it. We're taking credit for it, bro. What are your final thoughts on 2025? Where are we ending up? You told me you're feeling bullish, but you're also telling me we're going to get bored to death. What are your expectations for Q4 of 2025?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, what's going to happen is Bitcoin's going to start building up over the next few months. I think it's not going to be that long. I think we're gonna head towards the 180 level, something like that. And then retail is going to figure out that they fucked up again as usual, and then they're going to come storming in. Something crazy is going to happen to the price, and then I think we're going to see a drawdown. And I think this is going to last somewhere between now and February next year. And then where I'm leaning right now, I think we're going to see some kind of massive drawdown and consolidation as Bitcoin's going to sniff out incoming liquidity, and then take a breather for a year or so. I don't think we're going to see a massive drawdown. Like I said, 70-90%. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think it's going to be sizable enough to keep dopamine receptors happy.
Do you think some of these Treasury companies spin out at that point?
No, I think again, I think the similar blueprint is basically what happens. They get bought out at discounts or slight premiums or something like that. I don't think treasury companies are going to cause the next bear market. I just can't see that happening. They're all buying Bitcoin by selling stock right now, right? MSTR is the only one with its own damn, an idea of multiple different ways to buy Bitcoin. Everyone else is basically ATMing the stock to buy more Bitcoin. In that environment, I don't think we see any kind of, sellout. I think the worst thing that happens is they trade below a 1 MNAV and then they're acquired by someone else for stock.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very, very interesting. Well, dude, always a fabulous conversation with you, man. Always enjoy it. Always learn so much. Yeah, go check out British HODL's channel. It's fantastic. I'm a big fan. I learn things when I watch his content. Another aspect. Yeah, man, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.